Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, here over at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, here in the Midlothian region of Scotland, which, of course, as everybody should know by now, is the capital of the UK, is the capital of Europe, is the capital of the world, is the capital of the solar system, is the capital of the galaxy, is the capital of the neighbouring galaxies on either side, and is also the capital of the galaxy just over there and slightly to the right. I'm not sure I can keep this up, you know. But it's fun, it's entertaining, and it's a bit of a wee joke. But I hope everybody has had a great week so far. We are at the middle of the week. And I am feeling pretty good, actually. So far, a busy couple of days to start the week, but I have a long weekend coming up, which is very cool. I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm not working on the Friday, and I'm not working on the Monday, because on October 9th, it's my birthday! So we will have a bit of a birthday party on Sunday for Sunday Night Live. That will be a birthday special show. So we will have some fun. That's all I'm going to say. We'll have some fun. I don't know what we're going to do yet, but hopefully we'll have some fun. That would be cool. That'd be really nice, just to chill and have some fun. And make it a bit of a party. So that's what we're going to do on Sunday. And we are heading speedily towards the deadline for the Halloween 2023 challenge. We already have some submissions, by the way. Some people have attempted to make a submission, but they've not actually emailed us the link to where they've put their music. They just said that they are hereby entering, and they said that they put it up on SoundCloud but not given us a link. So in order to enter, you need to send us a link to where your piece of music is, so that we can have access to it, and we can listen to it, and we can see whether it meets the criteria for the challenge. And hopefully, if your work meets all the standards and is like right up there in scaring the shite out of us, and also meets the criteria of having the B. Locrian natural 6 scale very much front and center, and is incredibly creative in all kinds of wonderful ways, then you never know. You might just be chosen to be the winner. And if you are chosen to be the winner, then there's a prize at stake. And you will be given a choice of prize from Rich Cresswell, who is my partner in crime for this challenge and is also the very, very generous sponsor for this challenge. It's awesome working with him. He's very, very cool. And he has been incredibly generous. So a massive thank you to Rich for sponsoring that challenge and coming up with a lot of the broad idea for it. I basically said, hey, let's have a challenge where people write scary music. And he said, yeah, and I will provide the prize. I was just like, oh, that's great. And then he set all the criteria. So it's really, really cool working with him. I can't thank him enough for what he has done to make all of that possible. But there we go. That's Rich. I don't even know if he's here tonight. I believe he is working very, very hard to a pretty tight deadline this week, which is why he is a wee bit more absent than normal. But I'm sure he'll be back amongst us as we head towards the deadline, which is October 27th. Now, if you are new and you have no idea what I'm talking about and you just heard the word prize and thought, okay, what's this all about? So we are having a songwriting challenge. And the songwriting challenge is fairly straightforward and fairly simple. And the challenge is this. You need to compose a piece of music that is at the very least 90 seconds long and at the very most 5 minutes long. That has a clear, discernible beginning, middle, and end, and is very, very creative, but it has to feature a particular scale from which you can derive the melody, the harmony, and the bass part. And that is the B. Locrian Natural 6 scale. What the heck is that? Some of you might be asking. Well, basically you're playing the white notes from B to B, except for when you get to G. You don't play the G, you play the G sharp, which is this guy. There's the G sharp there. So that's what the scale sounds like. So it sounds a wee bit weird and a wee bit exotic. And the idea is that you need to write something that is weird, scary, very, very creative, and will kind of scare the crap out of us. Rich and I are up for being scared, so please scare us, definitely, with your music. And make sure that that scale is featured, and you know, you can provide some contrast, maybe use a different mode for a middle section or something, but your main feature needs to have that B. Locrian Natural 6 scale in it. And then the only other criteria in order to actually enter is you need to email me down here, jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, hit the contact form, the contact us button. You can scroll right down to the bottom of the page and there's a contact form down there. And what you need to do is post the link to your published piece of music. So you need to publish it somewhere like SoundCloud or Bandcamp or somewhere like that and make it freely available for us to get so that we can hear your work. And once we've got all of these submissions and we've got all of these pieces of music, Rich and I are going to spend that weekend of the 27th and 28th listening to all of your works. And we will pick, I think, depending upon the number of entries, the top 5 pieces of all of the submissions that we really like the most. And we will play those on the Halloween special that we are going to be doing, which will be on Sunday the 29th, because that's the nearest Sunday to Halloween. And on that Sunday night live show, we will play those 5 pieces of music. And so when we do that, we will have already decided who the winner is. But we want to play the 5 best pieces of music, and then we will announce who the winner is. And then all you'll need to do is reach out to Rich. He'll provide details by which you can contact him. And then you'll be able to choose the prize that you want, and that's how it will work. I hope that we will be able to do quite a few different challenges. Some will have a prize, some won't. Some would just be a challenge just to get you to be creative and make music. A bit like the December 10th challenge that we did a few years ago, where I basically said, right, we're picking an arbitrary date, December 10th. Everybody needs to, if you want to take part in it, release a piece of music on that date. And we will play some of your pieces of music. And we did that. I took part in it as well. I will be taking part in this as well. But obviously, Rich and myself are exempt. We won't be able to win. But we will certainly be taking part. Because, you know, this is all meant to be fun. For as much as there's a chance for you to win a prize, this is as much about fun as anything else, and about being creative and making music. That's the biggest part of this. So even if you don't win, you will have had a great time making a piece of music that follows a brief. And this is something, by the way, that professional composers do all the time. They have a brief where you need to provide a particular type of music with a particular vibe. Sometimes they'll even specify the instrumentation that you need to fulfill that brief. Now, in this case, it's a very simple brief to fulfill, but that's kind of, you know, what we're getting at. We want you guys to be able to learn how to, you know, kind of streamline your creativity, and, you know, kind of, here's these set of limitations in which you need to compose a piece of music, so that you acquire those skills. That's the idea. But also, have fun. Just have fun with it. Make music. Do something that you don't normally get to do. And we've got people here. Who don't normally write music. Writing music's not their thing. They're mix engineers, or, you know, they're session musicians. They don't normally write music, and they are taking part. They are actually creating a piece of music. And that, to me, is tremendously exciting, that we've got people who have stepped up to the plate and said, hey, I've never done this before. I'm going to do it. So for those of you that are in that position where, you know, writing music is not your thing, you normally mix other people's music, or you normally contribute to other people's music in some other way, you guys get massive kudos from me for doing that, because that takes a lot of guts, that takes a lot of balls, that takes a lot of confidence to be able to go, hey, I'm going to do something I've never done before. And that's fantastic. So you guys get extra special praise from me for doing that. And a big thank you for doing that. All right, let's go and see who is here. DJ Vu likes my t-shirt. Yeah, I like it too. My wife got this for me. And orange, I don't normally like as a color, but actually I really like this t-shirt. It's really nice. Okay, let's see who is here. Well, we've got Ron Figura, who was not the first in the door. Billy Morgan was first in the door, because Billy Morgan is always first in the door these days, which is cool. But Ron Figura has a really good philosophical question, which we're going to try and answer. That is actually a pretty big question. So I'm not 100% convinced I'm going to be able to answer it fully, but I'm going to try. And we got Just Bob, and we've got Don Oliver, we've got Christopher Rachna, we've got Dwayne, we've got Bobby Booth, we got DJ Vu, and we got Boris Dancy, who is here as well. And we've got, who else we got? We got Tony Stringer, who's here as well. And we got George Pinto, who says, I want to write a song called Red Bra. Well, you know what? If Red Bra's scared the shite out of you, then definitely do it, mate. I know what you're referring to as well, George, which is why I'm chuckling. And we got Paul Morgan here. We got Kevin from Kevin's Guitar Stories. And we've got Brett Marla, who says fun is built into the scale. It most certainly is, because it's not a normal scale. It really isn't normal. There are other scales that we could have selected, but I mean, Rich and I were talking, and I wanted to get everybody to use the diminished whole tone scale, but diminished whole tone scale is really, really cool. It's very, very weird sounding and cool, but might be a bit of a stretch for some people because it involves a lot of kind of black notes and things like that. So we went for this kind of simple yet slightly exotic scale. Maybe for the next challenge, I will say, hey, let's do something with the diminished whole tone scale, because actually you can do a lot with the diminished whole tone scale without it sounding particularly freaky and weird. It just sounds atmospheric. one day I will play you guys an example of where I wrote a piece of music for piano, clarinet, and flutes. Just a little trio piece that was designed just for that purpose. It was actually the opening sequence, title sequence music for a student short film. And it was great fun to work in. Actually, they had like a really specific brief. They wanted this particular rhythmic phrase to appear at various points during this opening title sequence. And I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. I can do that. So it was like a really kind of strangely specific brief, but it really worked. And I really enjoyed that piece of music. One day I'll dig it out, because that piece of music I wrote when I was actually a student myself. And I was collaborating with film students because they didn't have somebody to write music for their film. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. So that's what I did. Let's see, who else we got here? Like I said, we got Paul Morgan here as well. And the other thing I should remind you guys all of is that I think it's is it 8 p.m. or is it 9 p.m. Central? I'm not really sure. The Pennsylvania Studio One meetup is on tonight. So when we're finished here, I think there might be like a wee hour window before that starts up. So you guys, I recommend highly that you go along to it. Definitely. Because the meetups are really good. Whomever's hosting them, wherever they are in the world, it's great to be able to get to know other Studio One folks and other Presonus customers. I certainly have enjoyed that as an employee, as a Presonus employee. I very much enjoy getting along to all the different meetups. I don't get to all of them because most of them happen really, really late at night for me. But there's one that happens for me that's in the middle of the day, which is the Australia one. And I've been to that a couple of times, and those guys are really, really cool. It's a lot of fun. So, you know, what I do is I take an early lunch break for me from work, and I go and hang out with those guys for an hour, which is really great. They are a cool bunch of people, and it's great to have Presonus customers that are really passionate about Studio One down in Australia. All right, so it's 8 p.m., is it? Okay. 8 p.m, which is going to be, that's like 2 o'clock in the morning for me, I think. Yeah, that's going to be 2 o'clock in the morning for me. That's possibly a teensy-weensy bit too late, because you know how these meetups tend to last about 2 hours or so. So for me, that would be like 2 until 4 in the morning, and then I've got to be up at like 7. So yeah, that doesn't really work that well for me. Juan says Studio One Argentina. Absolutely. If you want to start up a Studio One meetup in Argentina, go for it. If there isn't one that exists, go for it. I believe there is a Brazilian one, but definitely go for it. If there's no Argentina one, all you need to do is, I think you have to email s1meetup@presonus.com, and Gregor, the software specialist, he is overseeing the Studio One meetups, and he is great, and he will get you set up with it if you're up for it. All right, so let's get to these questions, because we've got at least one in here. We got Ron's question, which is so big he's had to make 2 entries. But one's a continuation of the other. So he says, philosophical discussion. The role of a composer as an analogy to an architect when designing a structure. The person with vision of the final creation. I need to try and get the other part of this. And the subsequent processes that bring that to realization. The entities that are involved, the processes, the technologies, the best practices for completion. Okay, so I'm going to have to try and unpack that a wee bit. But I think what you are asking about is the composer as an architect. Is the composer like an architect? And how do they work with, all the other entities that eventually brings the thing to its final conclusion, the finally released piece? I think that is what you're getting at. So, when we talk about composers, we have to talk about people like John Williams and Hans Zimmer and Alan Silvestri and Don Davis and people like that who write film music, because film music is really these days the role that you would say, they are composers in the classical sense of the word composer, because they write large scale pieces of music, they write large scale works, and so there are a lot of moving parts if you are a composer at that kind of scale, and you are writing for a large blockbuster film. Now, large blockbuster films and the music that is made for them can come together in a variety of different ways. There are some where actually most of the instrumentation is actually virtual instruments and therefore not real instruments performed by real musicians. And then there are some that very definitely are real people and real performers. John Williams is probably in the classical tradition of film score composers. And so when he creates something like an E.T. score or a Star Wars score or an Indiana Jones score, what he does is he composes his music at a piano or similar with a video screen, and I think these days certainly he does use compositional software to help him. I think he uses Sibelius a reasonable amount, which is composition software, scoring software that is currently owned by Avid, the people that make Pro Tools. They bought it some time ago. Sibelius is pretty good. I used to use Sibelius for quite a while, and you can certainly bring video into Sibelius and you can compose to picture that way, and that works pretty well. But then, he will use like third-party orchestral libraries for creating mock-ups. What's a mock-up? Well, basically it's the orchestration and what the thing is going to sound like, and then he will get those to the directors and the producers of the film. So in the case of Indiana Jones, that's going to be George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, and using scoring software and third-party orchestral libraries and things like that, he will create the work in software, and then the directors and the producers will be able to get to watch the cues that they have shot and maybe mostly edited, and then they will hear his music performed by these virtual instruments. And then you have other people involved in this next phase, which is getting the score to a full orchestra with real musicians. So in the case of Indiana Jones and E.T. and Star Wars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind and great film scores like that, those were performed, and the film scores that Williams is still working on are performed by the London Symphony Orchestra, and they are recorded at Abbey Road Studios in London. I've been to Abbey Road Studios. I have worked there as a session player, so I know what that place is like. And so when you're working with a large orchestra like the London Symphony Orchestra, and maybe you're working with the London Symphony Chorus as well, in the case of Star Wars, you have, for example, the the music for the lightsaber scene towards the end of the Phantom Menace episode of Star Wars, which they called the Duel of the Fates, which features choral and orchestral music together. So you had the London Symphony Chorus and the London Symphony Orchestra, both of those recorded at Abbey Road Studios. So the other two important people that are next involved is the guy that writes the orchestrations, which basically transcribes the work out of the virtual and into charts for the orchestra and the choir. So they basically flesh out all the voicings and all of the all of the orchestrations. Kind of like flutes are playing these, clarinets are playing these, and all of that, which is taken from the mock-ups that Williams or whomever the composer is would do. And then you have copyists. Now, copyists is an interesting one, because certainly back in the day, a copyist basically did a lot of the actual writing out of charts and getting them engraved for the musicians, and they would actually sit on the musicians' music stands. So they are important people. And then you've got the orchestra, and then you've got the recording studio where everything's being recorded. So there's a lot of moving parts, and it's a very, very complicated process bringing all of this together. And so a film score, you would think that when they record a film score, you would think that you would play the whole score from start to finish, but you don't. The whole thing is broken up into short pieces that we would call a cue. And some of these can be very short. They can be 5 or 6 seconds long, or they can be as long as 4 or 5 minutes, depending upon the scene. And so what you would tend to do, having been a musician recording in an orchestra for a film score, you would tend to get all the short cues out of the way first. So you'd record them first. And they are recorded live for the most part. If you're working in an orchestra, you record them live in the sound stage or in the live room. Like Abbey Road, that would be Studio A or maybe Studio B. And so you get all the short ones out the way first. And then, that would take you from, 8:30 in the morning all the way through up to lunchtime. You get all of the short ones out of the way first. And then you'd get to the meatier ones. And those would be done in the afternoon. So, like maybe the longer 5, 6, 7 minute cues, or main titles or end titles if they're different. And so all of those would take place later in the day. And then when you get to the evening time, if overdubs are necessary, then that's when you get those done. And sometimes those would roll over into a second day if you needed to do overdubs. Like if somebody screwed up or whatever, and it's easy to fix with an overdub, then that's when those would get done. Or in the case of music by oh man, what's his name? The guy that wrote music for Apollo 13 and Titanic. Damn it, I've forgotten his name. But anyway, because he blended a lot of orchestral work and synthesizers and virtual instruments together in his scores, then all the orchestral elements would be recorded first, and then the synths and things like that and virtual instruments would be overdubbed afterwards. Performed either by the composer himself or by a composer plus, other people as well. So there's a lot of moving parts involved. And certainly when it comes to, recording the orchestra live in the studio, that is a lot of effort. And trust me, I've been there because, the first thing you're doing in the morning, that first hour and a half of the session, you are getting levels for headphone monitoring and all of that all sorted out, and recording levels for each section of the orchestra all sorted out. So that's when you would tend to get a chance to rehearse some of the larger, more challenging cues, which is great because for the most part, these orchestras, like the London Symphony Orchestra, they are going in and they are sight reading. They are sight reading the score. There are no rehearsals. You just go in, you read the chart, you perform the chart to the best of your ability, and that's it. Which is why, orchestras like the London Symphony Orchestra are so highly in demand and so highly paid. It's because they are the best in the business and they are the best in the world, and you are going to get the best results ever out of them. Which is why John Williams works with them all the time on his film scores, because he knows how great they are. But yeah, you have to have phenomenal reading chops. And you need to be able to sight read to an extremely high level to do a John Williams score. I have never, ever, ever been involved in any of those kind of scores. The film scores I have worked on are kind of low budget films. I'm at the other end of the scale, so I tend to there's like a sessions orchestra that I work with, and so they'll either record in Glasgow or they'll record in Angel Studios down in London, or some other studio down in London. So sometimes, I will either take the train or I'll fly down there and I'll go and do what I have to do. But you still have to have pretty good reading skills, or a damn fine set of ears where you can work things out pretty quickly and easily. But yeah, there's a lot of moving parts because you have multiple recording engineers, because there are so many microphones to set up, and all of that. And then you have producers, directors, and everybody knows the score inside out, backwards, forwards, sideways. Even if they're not musicians, like George Lucas is not a musician, Steven Spielberg is not a musician, but both of them know the score. They know who's playing what and when, and they know the melodies, know the counter melodies, they know all of that, they know and they hear. And if there's like a timpani part that goes wrong, then they know, we're going to have to overdub the timpani of this particular cue. And so they'll do that. They'll make the timpani player stay behind. Everyone else will go to the pub, and the poor timpani player has to overdub his parts in an ISO booth. But things like percussion and all of that, everything in the orchestra, when you are doing a film score, all the orchestra, there's lots of baffling. And there's as much isolation as you can possibly get. Like, the percussion will actually be in a separate isolation booth, almost a separate room. And I've certainly been in situations where the orchestra, like the strings and things have been in one room, and then the brass are in a completely different room, and the woodwinds are in another room, and then percussion are in about 3 or 4 different isolation booths. And so everybody gets to see everybody via, cameras and monitor screens. And we all get to see the conductor via the same kind of thing. And we all work to a click. That's the other thing. You work to a click. Everything is done to a flipping click. So, orchestras tend to, work simply off the conductor's baton, but even with the conductor's baton, everyone is working to a click. So you spend the entire day listening intently to a click track, because everything has to be nailed to the grid really as precisely as you possibly can. Why? Because it makes editing easier after recording is done. So, if you do, like I said, some of those shorter cues that you would do in the morning, if there's some foul ups or there's some false starts or whatever, it's dead easy to just drop in alternate takes. Like if let's say everyone nails their part on the first take, so they do a second take, but maybe the guy that's playing the synth melody maybe he messes up, or maybe he messed up on the first take. He just got a couple of notes wrong, but he fixes it on the second pass, and he fixes it. So they'll use that second take of that synth part, but everyone else, it's first take. So there's all of that. So if everything's done to the click track, even with real live actual orchestral musicians, it makes editing so much easier. So there's a lot of moving parts. So I hope that that's kind of covered some of that. I mean, that's a massively broad question. I could probably spread this question over about 2 or 3 different shows. But we are like, we've got 20 minutes left, and I would like to get some other questions in here. Boris says, will you be joining the after show? I might be. You never know. Ron says orchestration would be the blueprint. Yeah, orchestration is fun. Being able to take somebody's work and then flesh it out for, the orchestra. Like, somebody will have gone, oh, this is going to be a luscious B flat major chord. And so you see that on the sketch score, and then your job as the orchestrator is to make that happen, is to voice that across all of the instruments of the orchestra, or as many of the instruments of the orchestra as is required by the composer for you to do. So it may well be that you have to put in, you have to have the entire orchestra play it, or maybe it's just like, hey, let's just have mostly the low strings and middle strings, so kind of like basses, cellos, violas, and second violins, and then we'll have flutes and oboes and clarinets on the top, and maybe with some muted trombones, also filling out that mid-range. And that's your luscious B flat major chord. And then you just have to spread all the notes of this B flat major chord across all of those voices. So the orchestration aspect of things is kind of done there. Mock-up would be like a model of the building. Yeah, kind of. That would be kind of right, yeah. So blueprints and mock-ups would be scale models. So you know how sometimes, if you're designing, say, a new industrial estate or something like that in a section of a town that's like underdeveloped. And so you buy up this massive, 4,000, 5,000 square foot plot of land or whatever it might be, and you're going to build this industrial estate so that there are industrial units where people are able to do manufacturing and research and development and stuff like that, so that there will be separate units within this industrial estate. Or maybe you're designing a high-rise block of apartments, or a big, a massive, great big high-rise hotel or something like that. Then you'd have the blueprints, and from the blueprints, you would then develop a scale model that investors can look at, and they can go, oh yeah, absolutely, I'm going to throw my money at building this thing because it's going to be awesome. And so, yes. So the blueprints is the composer's sketch score, and then the mock-ups are the renderings of that. Basically, hey, this is how this may well sound, and that's something that the director and the producers of the film, they will want to listen to. So you would use a lot of virtual instruments, a lot of orchestral libraries to do all of that. And then from that, you print those kind of things out, and your orchestrator would flesh things out for the orchestra to come in and actually take over those virtual instrument roles. The best film composers have a sixth sense for combining sounds in a special way. Most definitely. I think John Williams has described the role of the film composer like this. He says, music is like the additional person in the scene. So the composer's role is not just to write something pretty to accompany action that is on screen or dialogue that's on a screen, but the music has to capture the mood and the vibe of the scene, plus also bring out the emotional responses of the characters as they interact in the scene, and also highlight certain aspects of the characters to enable plot development. So, for example, in Star Wars, Luke and Leia's themes, they are thematic pieces of melody that occur whenever either Luke or Leia are on screen, or whether they are being talked about or referred to. You will hear these pieces of melody. And you'll hear them in a variety of different ways. So this piece of melodic idea, this melodic statement, will basically encapsulate the character of, say, for example, Leia's theme. It encapsulates Leia's personality, some of her backstory, some of the things that has happened to her, and how those impact how she responds in particular scenes. So you will hear lots of different treatments of Leia's theme. You'll hear a nice, bright, warm major theme. You'll hear a slightly darker, more melancholic minor theme when it's required. A more anxious theme when that's required. A distraught theme version of the theme when that is also required. But you'll also see how John Williams intertwines different themes for different characters within the scenes to enable plot development. For example, when you're listening to Luke's theme, there are also aspects of the Imperial theme as well, and also Vader's theme, also entangled and intertwined within Luke's theme. And so you see plot development. And of course, there's the Imperial March. And that Imperial theme is used throughout all of the Star Wars films. Even when there are no stormtroopers, there's no Vader, there's no Emperor, there's none of that, none of the Imperial stuff involved in the scene. Even when Luke is at home on Tatooine with his aunt and uncle, they might refer in passing to Vader. You will hear the Imperial theme. So it's being hinted at, and we call those portents. And in the film industry, they do the same. For example, a really great example of a portent is in Back to the Future. The opening scene of the first Back to the Future film, where you see the camera slowly tracking across all of these clocks and things. And all of those clocks are exactly in sync with each other. But if you pause it at a certain point, you'll see that there is a clock with a paper cutout figure of Doc Brown hanging from one of the arms of the clock. And that is a portent of what is going to take place in the future in the film, because that actually happens to Doc Brown. But you don't see, your first hint of that going to happen is in that first few seconds of the film. And it's brilliantly done because it's a visual cue of something that actually happens later. And so in music, we do this all the time. When we're writing music for, a symphonic work or for film, you might hint at a particular theme that is going to be unraveled later on. Like Luke's theme in Star Wars occurs pretty early on in, Episode 4, A New Hope. You hear that pretty early on, and the Imperial theme also very early on, long before you start encountering the dark side and the Empire and all of that. But those things are portents. They set up future things. So those are kind of composing and obviously filmmaking techniques that help with plot development and story development. You drop these little seeds into the viewer's mind about what is yet to come, and it keeps them engaged. And then when they get to that point, when you get to the point in Back to the Future where you see Doc Brown hanging from the clock, you go, oh yeah. Well, you don't, maybe, unless you've really picked that portent out, but you may not have made the obvious connection early on, but certainly later on in your brain, you will make that connection. It might not be an oh yeah moment, but the connection is made. And so you go, oh, yes, I knew this was going to happen. So as much as it's also a surprise, you also kind of knew it was going to happen because you had this thing suggested to you like before. And of course, the whole series of films, and I'm forgetting the title of the films, the Final Destination films. The first one I thought was terrific. The rest of them were rubbish, but the first one was absolutely terrific because the people that escaped death on that plane were supposed to die on that plane, and they don't. But you know when they're going to die and how they're going to die before it actually happens, because you see a reflection in a window that foretells it. It's coming. Plus, you also get the music of John Denver, and that's another big clue. So you see the death about to happen before it happens in a reflection, and you get the John Denver song, and then, hey presto, that person dies in a really rather imaginative way. But you've already had the visual hint that it's going to happen. And so Final Destination is very, very clever in their use of portents. They maybe overuse it a wee bit, but it's very, very cool. And the use of John Denver every time somebody is about to die, I think is both brilliant and funny. It's just a shame they kind of labored that as the series of films progressed. But still, fun. Nonetheless. Don says, what do you mean by a link to SoundCloud? That is where I sent my song. Okay, if you uploaded your song to SoundCloud, I need to be able to find that. So, in SoundCloud, you can locate your song on SoundCloud, and then you are able to create a link from that song, and then you email that link to me, and then when I click on that link, it takes me directly to your song. Because I don't want to be going into SoundCloud and going, okay, I need to search for Don Oliver. Because there may be 20 or 30 or 40 or more Don Olivers on SoundCloud. And how do I know which one is which? That's going to take up time. So what you need to do is send me a link to your song on your SoundCloud page. Okay? That's what I'm after. That's how that needs to work, because I don't want to have to go on to SoundCloud and search for Don Oliver and then try and figure out which Don Oliver's SoundCloud is the right one, because I could be having to search through several, and that's just time that I don't have and time that I don't need to be wasting. I want to get to your music very quickly and very easily, and also I need to be able to share that link with Rich as well. So it's not just me you're thinking about, it's Rich as well. So I need to compile basically a document for Rich that has all of the links to all of the submissions, so that we can all go through them, because not everybody's going to upload to SoundCloud. Some people are, some people are going to upload to Bandcamp, some people are going to do something else. But we need to have a link so that we can go and very easily get your work. So that's what I'm referring to, Don. So yeah, I'm saying, oh, I've posted it on SoundCloud is a bit vague and general. I'm absolutely sure you have a SoundCloud account, but I need to know which one is yours, and then I need to know where on your SoundCloud page the song is. So the best thing to do is send a link. Creating a link is dead easy. You just copy paste the URL of your song. So go onto your SoundCloud page, click on your song starts to play. In the URL bar at the top, copy that, go into the email, paste that into the email, and then that is the link to your song on SoundCloud. Okay? So I hope that helps you get that. The bottom line, there is a vision in the composer's head. Yes, but it's not just the composer's vision. It's the director's vision. It's the screenplay writer's vision. It's the story writer's vision. So in the case of Star Wars, it's George Lucas's vision. That's kind of where it starts. It starts with the whole, the person who has created the whole thing. So that's George Lucas. He's the creator of the entire Star Wars universe. Okay? So it's his thing. And he brings somebody like Spielberg on board, not just as a director, but also as, to help him flesh out how it's going to work in practice to get this film made. The composer is a big part of that. But, the composer has a very strict set of instructions, and that is the brief. So when George Lucas says to Spielberg, hey, I want you to direct this movie that I'm making. And so they work together on the storyboard. And they work, here's George Lucas's screenplay. He may have written the screenplay already. He's certainly written the story for it. So from the story, you get the screenplay. The screenplay is essentially the script. And then from the script, you then start to invite people in who you need to work with to do things like the music. So that's where the composer comes into play. The composer will be involved from the screenplay stage and onwards, because they will need to know kind of, hey, what's the action? How's it, what's the story? What's the vibe? How's it going to unfold? And, the setting and all of that. They need to be invited to be in the world that is created by the creator, so that they have all the correct context. And then from that, they will get musical ideas. They'll need to know what these characters are like. So John Williams will be like, okay, we've got the screenplay. I know how the story unfolds. I know the dialogue. I know all of the scenes before they're shot, and how each character interacts with the other characters. So he needs all of that information. And from there, he's able to create musical ideas and musical concepts that are going to serve what is on the screen, because that's what the music is for. The music is to serve what is on the screen, to make the visual experience, completely memorable for people that are watching the film. So music is incredibly, incredibly important to film. Always has been. But it's, at the very dawn of the film era, music played, before there was even the ability to have sound for films. Music played an incredibly important part. And, at first when budgets were really, really small, you had a guy just playing a piano. And so they would literally just sit and they would watch the whole film through, and they would write music according to what they saw on picture. But they would still work with the directors and the producers at pretty much every phase. So, the composer is following instructions as much as anything else, and they are trusted by the composer. The composer is trusted by the creators of the film. So the screenplay writer, the story writer, the creator of the world in the case of Star Wars, and the directors and the producers. So to be basically the extra character that glues everything together. And that's what the composer's role is. So is there a vision inside of Williams's head? Yes, but it's not his own vision. It's the vision of the director and the screenplay writers and the producers. It's their vision. But he might have musical ideas that have come out of that vision. He might decide, hey, this Darth Vader character, he needs lots of low, rasping, harsh sounding brass because it's going to enhance his character. So anytime we see him, we need to have this dark brass and, you know, militaristic melody that's got a real sense of dark urgency about it. And so, you know, those ideas will come, but those ideas come out of the vision that is given to them. So some film composers, like when I'm working with students, they will give me some clear ideas of what they want the music to sound like. They may even say, hey, we want an orchestral sound for this. Or they may say, hey, no, we actually want lots of analog synths for this. Or, you know, they may ask for something else. Because they've already got in their idea, they've already got in their mind kind of what they think should go with this. And so my role really is to follow their brief and follow their requests. And so sometimes I will have, you know, I will write something and they'll say, yeah, we like this, but can you rewrite this section because we think it's, you know, maybe too dark? Or can you have, I don't know, more flutes or more woodwinds in this section rather than as much brass as you got? And so then I will go and rewrite. Or, hey, can we make this a little bit more bright sounding, maybe? And I go, okay, so more major chords than minor chords? Sure, we can do that. So, you know, I've written a score and then had to rewrite parts of it or whole sections of it because it wasn't that they didn't like it. It's just that it didn't quite 100% fulfill what they wanted. And they've got a clear idea of what they want. So it is kind of composing to order. And it's not always as elegant as it sounds or as glamorous as it sounds as a role. But yeah, so the composer's vision comes out of the vision of the writers and the producers and the director of the film. But yeah, that's an important point to make, though. Let's see, Anonymous Housewife is here. Hello, my dear. Good to see you. I'm glad you're here. And we've also got Jonny Guy from Home Studio Trainer here as well, which is awesome. Brett says, do we need to send an email per entry? I would figure that multiple links should be accessible from a single email. Yes, you can do that. Yep. Multiple links for a single email will be just fine. And we got a link there to the Studio One meetup, which is cool. And of course, the password is S1 Meetup. We got Mike Johnson here as well, which is great. Boris is saying he has a specific request to ask me. Okay, I mean you can ask that here if you want, Boris. Because I don't know whether I'm going to be sticking around because this show finishes at 1 a.m., which it is now, by the way. So we're finishing now. So yeah, so we'll be finishing now, but whether there's an after show party or not is kind of up to those that have Zooms, like Billy or like Mike. If they are willing and prepared to host one, that would be cool. And I may be around for a wee bit, but please understand that, you know, it's late for me already. So I don't necessarily want to be up at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, but you know, we'll see. Let's see. Sean is here, which is cool. I'm glad you're here, Sean. Welcome. He says, have you talked about thematic music that comes in as the conclusion of events in film scores? Yes, we've kind of talked about thematic ideas. Like, you know, Williams has a theme for each of the characters in Star Wars. Plus, he has an overarching theme as well, which is kind of like you have a theme for the Jedi, you have a theme for the dark side of the Force, and you have a theme for the Emperor, and you have a theme for Vader. So, and you have, of course, the Imperial theme in general, and then you have a theme for the Alliance. And all of these kind of thematic ideas, especially when all of those, when you get to the climax of a film, all of those themes come together and they interact with each other. Sometimes they're fighting against each other. And Williams's music, when that happens, is glorious. Like the music for, you know, final battle scenes that in the Star Wars films are amazing. I think back to the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, if any of you remember that film. But it featured that da 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 da. That was its theme that went all the way through the whole film. And it starts right from the very beginning of the film. But it's really, really unassuming. And you don't really notice it at first. But it goes through the whole film. And eventually you have people like singing it because it's a melody that's in their heads and they don't know where this particular melody has come from. And then you get to the end of the film where you have, spoiler alert here, you have the mothership, and it's, the mothership is going absolutely nuts and is doing this incredible contrapuntal development of this theme. And of course, Williams has to score all of that. And of course, in his case, this is a chance for him to show off just how good he is as a composer. And he employs a lot of very, very cool techniques. He has fugue, he has all sorts of other contrapuntal devices where he takes this theme and he cascades it all around the orchestra. And it's both hilarious and ingenious, the way he does it. And it's just brilliant. It's a brilliant film, and the score is brilliant. And then of course you have the E.T. film where, you know, the climax of that theme is how you've taken the Aliens theme and you've taken it through a really broad emotional arc. And then when it gets to the conclusion of the film, it's just, the music at the end of the film is just beautiful. It's just some of the most emotional music I have ever listened to. And I have the score to E.T. up there on my shelf somewhere. And it's great just to put the CD on and read through the score and follow it. And you can see all, you know, all the thematic development. It's great. Anyway, we are at the end of the show. Thank you everybody for coming, and sorry, there were questions that I was not able to get to. Boris says, can we name the bug that I found? Well, I'm not sure what you're referring to there. Yeah, I'm not really sure what you're referring to there. But if you've reported anything like a bug that you think is a bug that you've found and you've reported it to Persona's technical support and they've logged it internally, then the good guys at Persona Software will fix it because they are good and they fix stuff. And hopefully it'll be fixed in the next update or one after that. Who knows? But they are very good. All right, so we have a Zoom link from Mike, and then of course after that there's the meetup, which I don't think I'll be going to because it's too late, but I may stick around for the after show for a wee while. Okay folks, I will see you all on Sunday for my birthday special. So until then folks, I wish everybody a very good night and a very good rest of your week. Good night.